We'll take that as a yes. Cool. All right, welcome everyone. Very excited to kickstart our KL-BKK Roundtable. This is the first time that we have two cities in the same roundtable. And this is also very exciting because this roundtable is part of the Road to Summit, to the French AI Action Summit that will happen next month. We are co-hosting these events together with the ASEAN Youth Organization as well. So welcome everyone. Before we kickstart, I will just give a quick intro about AI Safety Asia. So AI Safety Asia is a global nonprofit dedicated to the international governance of safe AI. We are starting in Southeast Asia. That's why you can see that our roundtable series started in Jakarta in September last year. What we're trying to do is to develop an interoperable and inclusive AI governance system across Asia and to bridge the global North-South gap in terms of AI governance. We do that by supporting people, key stakeholders through capacity building, conducting actionable research, and also facilitating intergenerational dialogue on AI safety. We believe that this is a key steps to a future of safe and governed AI across Asia. And this will help mitigate catastrophic risks, as well as reduce adverse societal impacts and unlock the next frontier in socio-economic development for the 60% of the world population. We bring together leading experts, policymakers, and stakeholders in the field of AI to discuss these unique challenges, as well as opportunities of AI safety in the Asian context. So we have started this roundtable series in September last year. Our next stop is actually a very interesting one. We'll be co-hosting our first in-person event during the French AI Action Summit in Paris, together with Asia Society on the 8th of Feb. So in case any of you are in Paris, or if you know of any contacts that are from different Asian governments participating in the summit, let us know. We might be able to extend the invitation. It's quite a small, intimate gathering, so we'll try our best. And then for the next virtual roundtable series, we will be focusing on Vietnam, Brunei, and also Laos. That will be on the 20th Feb. And then about the roundtable series. So we have so far had 3 roundtable discussions already. We had the Jakarta one in September, and in that one, we had the former Minister of Trade of Indonesia, Pak Gita, as well as leading experts, both from the region. So for example, Professor Ahmad Riza from Indonesia, as well as leading experts internationally like Robert Traeger and Espen Krant, joining the conversation talking about Indonesia's AI governance context. Same for the Manila Roundtable in collaboration with Mickiewicz. And then in November, we moved the conversation to Singapore. If you missed any of these roundtable, you can go to YouTube and simply Google AI Safety Asia, and I'm sure you'll find the recording. And without further ado, I would like to invite Constanze to make an opening speech. So Constanze is joining us from the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where she advised the French government on the upcoming AI Action Summit, as well as previously on G7 and G20 International Summit. She previously worked for the World Food Programme and holds a master's degree at UCL in international development. All right, welcome, Constanze.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to provide a few details and more information on the AI Action Summit. I'm really happy to be with you all today, and I wanted to start with showing up the fact that we are organizing as France the AI Action Summit on the 10th and on the 11th of February. This summit is following the previous AI summit that happened last year in Bletchley Park and in Seoul. Maybe you heard of this. And those summits were focusing on the risks and on the strengths around AI, trying to make AI safer for the world. We think that it's a very important topic, but for the summit that France is hosting, the Action Summit in February, we are trying to broaden the scope And we will not only look at the risks of AI, we will also look at the opportunities that AI can bring to society. So we really want to show that AI can be at the public interest, can be at the benefits of society. We need to favor the emergence of those AI models that have high impacts in society in terms of education, for example, in terms of health, for sustainable agriculture, even how AI can help us use resources more efficiently, and how AI can help us fight against climate change. So we are really looking at having a summit that is action-oriented, focusing on concrete deliverables, but also very inclusive and very open, meaning we are inviting more than 90 countries. We want to showcase the fact that the AI discussions on the international scene needs to be with everyone. And it needs to be with everyone in terms of countries, as I said. So we are inviting lots of countries from Southeast Asia. As you know already, we have Thailand, we have Philippines, we have Singapore, we have Cambodia at the head of states level. But we are also looking at creating a multi-stakeholder summit. So we are inviting small and large companies. We are also inviting representatives from academia, from international organizations, as well as from civil society at large. And for this summit, we are focusing on, I'll say, 4 main priorities. The first priority is, of course, around safety and security of AI, because it's something that we want to follow up on. After Bletchley, after Seoul, we think that we still need to progress together towards commitments to make AI systems safer, but also to monitor together and to evaluate with the same criteria the AI systems. The second priority, of course, as I said before, is we want to prioritize AI for the public interests. So it means that we want to also focus on reducing the digital gap between those countries, like developed countries, who actually already have access to AI systems, already have access to AI resources, and those countries, emerging or developing countries, who today don't have the access to resources and who lack those AI systems and who fear losing the AI race. So we really want to come together and find a solution on how to bridge this gap. And how to bridge this gap is how we can help countries reinforce their capacities in AI. So we have different concrete solutions for this in terms of looking at how we can make standards together, how we can make concrete reinforcing capacities, tools on AI, and how we can have, like, scientific reports showing how to support together the reduction of the digital gap. So this is really the AI at the service of the public interest at large in terms of the worlds between those countries, but also how we can help create those models that have high impacts on society. And the third focus, I will say, is on sustainable AI. So what we want to say here is we want to try and make sure that the AI systems that we create nowadays can help advance the SDGs. And with a very specific focus on how AI can help advance the fight against climate change and the environment. So when we say sustainable AI, we want to showcase the fact that we need to start having this international conversation with different AI practitioners from the private sector and also from governments on what are the environmental impacts on AI, what are the energetical impacts of AI. This is the first time that we will gather together and have these discussions at this very high level. So the idea is how, on a voluntary basis, we can have those practitioners of AI coming together, starting to share their data. Again, it's all voluntary, and their data on how their AI systems are using energy, and how they're consuming energy, and how we make sure that new AI system can consume less of energy and can use resources more efficiently. So how basically we can help those AI systems in the future become more energy friendly and have a better use of resources on the entire value chain of the AI systems, meaning also at the hardware level, how we can make those data centers that consume lots of energy more energy friendly. So that's one of the big, like I would say, the third focus of the summit. And the fourth focus, of course, is around governance. And it's also a big topic for you today for this panel. And I understand for the organization as a whole, because what we see nowadays in the international scene on AI is we have lots of different governance initiatives that exist within international organizations at UNESCO, at OECD, at ITU, at the UNSG level. And with this AI Action Summit, we want to rationalize and streamline all the existing tracks and governance tracks on AI and try to identify the gaps in the governance discussions, the different topics where we need more consensus. And one of them, for example, is around the environmental impacts of AI. We need to come together and start looking at how we can come up with common frameworks and common criteria to measure the environmental impacts of AI. So that's a part of the governance discussion. We also think that there is this tool that has been developed at the UN level that you know of. It's a global digital compact that was launched last September. And the UN is the most representative international organizations in terms of country representativeness nowadays. So we want to help also implement the Global Digital Compact with concrete solutions, with working together during this AI Action Summit. So this is for the priorities, the thematic and the topics that we will discuss about at the AI Action Summit. But I also wanted to come back on the entire agenda of the week. You already know because you are organizing one side event. We're going to have lots of side events organized by lots of different partners, companies, countries, but also NGOs, international organizations all around the summit. The 10th and the 11th, it's going to be the political summit with those topics discussed with head of states and CEOs. But we are also having a moment specifically dedicated to scientists before the summit. We call it the Scientific Days. It's happening on the 6th and on the 7th of February. It will be at Paris-Saclay at Institut Polytechnique. They will be the organizers. And the idea here is to convey international scientists from all over the world and for them to have a safe space to discuss and try and find consensus around scientific questions on AI that don't have consensus nowadays. For example, what are the high risks on AI? What can we fear? These kind of things. And we wanted to have a specific privileged, dedicated moment for scientists before the political summit, so their recommendation can then feed into the discussions that will happen on the political summit. We're also going to have a specific moment the weekend before the summit dedicated to AI and culture. It's going to be the cultural weekend. So the idea is to showcase how AI can help creation as a whole in terms of, we're going to have shows, dance shows, exhibitions all over Paris, showcasing the more creative side of AI. So this is to come back on the agenda of this summit, which is more of a week of AI than just one summit with lots of events happening, side events around. And I really hope that this open, inclusive, and action-oriented narrative that we are trying to establish within the AI Action Summit can feed into your discussions, into this panel today. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Constance. And then next we will have Jam from IAPS to share a little bit about the situation on Malaysia and also on Thailand. Jam, over to you.
Sure, yeah, and thank you again to the AI Safety Asia team for inviting me to join the session and to give this talk. So let me just share slides. All right. Yeah, can I get a thumbs up if people can see these? I think they're up.
Yep, we're good.
Great, thanks. So I'll be giving a very short, quite high-level overview of the AI policy and governance situation, basically the lay of the land in Thailand and Malaysia. Apologies in advance. There are a lot of agency name acronyms that I'll be repeating a little bit. But I'll be covering three main things. So one, the governance situation. So basically what agencies are sort of taking responsibility for AI policy, taking the lead on various things. What does the overall AI national strategy look like in both countries? And then specifically kind of diving into what does AI safety promotion look like in each of these countries. So we'll start with Thailand. So in Thailand, there's not currently any single centralized agency, but I've highlighted three that might be of interest. There's the Electronic Transactions Development Agency, or the ETDA. They have partial responsibility for drafting guidelines and laws around AI. Historically, they've also drafted guidelines and laws related to kind of, as you could guess by the name, electronic transactions, more generally, things around cybersecurity and data protection. Within the ETDA, there's also the AI Governance Center, or the AIGC, which gives sort of expert advice, shares research with industry. Recently, they've shared some kind of AI governance research with the Thai health sector. They're developing a transnational expert network at the moment. And they've also done a kind of study of existing AI standards, particularly the EU and Brazil, which is sort of fed into some subsequent draft legislation, which I'll go into. The second actor that might be worth knowing is the Office of the National Digital Economy and Society Commission, or the ONDE. They're also under the same ministry, and their overarching responsibility is for formulating and implementing what's called the Thailand Digital Economy Master Plan, which is kind of an overall sort of digital master plan for the country, but a subset of which is AI related. And they were one of the main actors in drafting another piece of very interesting AI safety relevant legislation, the 2022 draft decree, which I'll also get into. Thirdly, there's the National Science and Technology Development Agency, and they're basically tasked with AI, R&D, and infrastructure projects. So they're the main government actor behind Lanta, which is their supercomputing center, backed by the Thai government. In terms of national AI strategy, there's the National AI Strategy and Action Plan, which runs from 2022 to 27. It's a fairly balanced or comprehensive national strategy, so covers things like AI law and ethics, so preparing regulations and guidelines and enforcing these guidelines, but also covers things to kind of push, I guess, the kind of development of AI in the country. So as you can imagine, infrastructure, data and computing is a major pillar, things around manpower, things around promoting AI R&D and innovation, and also sort of promoting AI use both in the private and public sectors. I've listed some on the slide, some strategic initiatives, which I won't get into, but sort of just gives a snapshot of some of the current things that are being done, backed by the Thai government. In terms of AI safety promotion, there's not much concrete that's been done at the moment. There's a sort of AI ethics guideline that was put out by the AI Governance Center that's mostly targeted towards sort of company executives, so very enterprise focused. There are plans to make subsequent guidelines, I think 2 guidelines, I believe sometime this year, that might be a bit more comprehensive. These would be voluntary. And there's actually, interestingly enough, some EU Act inspired draft legislation that's currently being considered. So there's the draft act on promotion and support of AI innovations in Thailand. One interesting bit of this is the establishment of an AI innovation testing center, which will require testing of AI systems and the creation of AI standards. And it also entrusts the ETDA to prepare methods for assessing risks from AI innovations. The other piece of legislation is the 2022 decree, which is mainly by the ONDE. And this actually takes a risk-based approach to AI, so similar to the EU AI Act. So establishes requirements for high-risk AI, prohibits certain AI uses, and then also would give penalties for non-compliance. So an example of like a prohibited AI system would be using an AI system for like social scoring or exploiting some sort of vulnerability based on demographic characteristics, or things involving using like real-time biometric identification, so basically surveillance, is prohibited. High risk would be things like using AI in sort of safety components of systems like critical infrastructure systems or judicial processes. For Malaysia, there's been a sort of movement from sort of several fairly fragmented or unconnected players to a centralized agency, which is called the National AI Office. So this was officially established actually just December of last year, so very recently. And it's under the My Digital sort of public company. So it's unclear at the moment whether they'll take a significant regulatory role or act as more of a kind of coordinator of many different actors, and it's kind of a wait and see. But and they're still currently fairly small. I think they're planning to hire 20 or so staff very soon. In terms of strategy, what you can observe about Malaysia is that similar to Thailand, I think the perhaps more so, that's my interpretation, the kind of overwhelming focus is on sort of the economic imperatives to develop AI. So the fear of sort of being able to take advantage of AI's many potential benefits and also not falling behind other countries. You can see this reflected in the National AI Office mission. So to accelerate economic growth, use AI to improve public services, while also ensuring inclusive and equitable access. There are a few strategic initiatives. So there are a few deliverables actually that should happen sometime this year if all things go according to plan. Some things are more sort of safety flavored. There should be an AI code of ethics that's put out, an AI adoption regulatory framework, as well as a AI technology action plan that runs from 2026 to 2030. All those are sort of in the works at the moment. Another interesting part of Malaysia's AI strategy seems to be, and there's also similar things happening in Thailand, big partnerships with large kind of global tech firms that are looking to build critical infrastructure, catering to the kind of growing demand for cloud and AI services. So there's strategic partnerships happening right now in Amazon, with Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, another big sort of player. Although interestingly enough, they might be affected by the recent Biden AI diffusion rule, which sort of limits export of chips to Malaysia, potentially. In terms of AI safety promotion, I think there's no major AI safety legislation yet. I think Malaysia is still sort of building capacity and trying to learn about the field. And there's no clear national narrative, I think. One possible, maybe more likely angle that might happen is something around sort of online safety. So things around content moderation, scams, cyberbullying, misinformation. The communication ministry in Malaysia, my understanding, was sort of pushing for this angle, and there's an incentive to do cross-border regulation on it. But ultimately, different people are concerned about different things. So I think we're still also in a wait and see period with Malaysia. But there has been some stuff. There has been the voluntary ethics governance guidelines that were released, which scopes out a few different areas of interest, data protection, liability for harmful content, disclosure for companies using Gen AI to make content or recommendations. And in terms of multilateral efforts, there isn't much, but I think there is a clear opportunity. So they have been participating, for example, in the ISO AI standards development, but there's a clear opportunity, given that Malaysia is chairing ASEAN this year, to push for maybe more regional efforts around AI safety. So possibly like an AI safety network just within the region, maybe via things like the meeting of digital ministries and other possible fora. Finally, in terms of kind of key takeaways, so I think we can see that in both countries, the major focus has been on economic opportunities from AI and building out AI infrastructure, often with partnerships from large tech companies. So maybe some interesting sort of, power dynamics or kind of strategy there. I'd say overall, there's fairly limited AI safety efforts in both countries across kind of maybe all themes. There's no major safety legislation that's come into force yet, and no real major multilateral safety efforts that are being led by these countries or with these countries as like a major actor. Although some things where they're participating in, for example, the coming Paris Action Summit. And I think there's a broader question about what does safety really even mean to these countries. So it's still very unclear what themes in AI safety, if any, are going to be activating policymakers and societal concerns. I will say that, yeah, at the moment, it seems like at least frontier safety, so safety issues relating to like the most state-of-the-art systems coming out of kind of the major labs, it seems to be very much out of the conversation. And yeah, I think kind of bottom line, it seems unlikely that either country will emerge as kind of a leading developer. Maybe that's like very obvious, but or also kind of maybe a leading regulator. Although I do think some very interesting AI and AI governance niches would exist for both countries, which hopefully I can talk a little bit about during the panel. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Jam. And let me share my screen again. All right, cool. Yeah, and then for the remaining time, we will do the panel discussion. Jam will actually be joining the panel as well, and I will do the introductions of all the panel speakers and also moderator. Just a quick housekeeping announcement. We welcome all of you to submit your questions for any of the panelists and the moderator as well. There is a tiny activity button at the bottom right of your screen. If you click on that, that's the Q&A question function. So you can submit your questions there, and my colleague, our co-founder, Leanne, will be monitoring the questions coming in as well, and then we'll do the Q&A at the last sessions. So an introduction about Jam. I should have done that before his presentation. Jam is a researcher with the policy and standard teams at IAPS, and previously he was a manager at the Effective Institution Project and a program officer at the Asian Productivity Organization, where he focused on public sector reform, regulation of emerging tech, and also strategic foresight. He holds an MPhil in politics from Oxford and also a BSc in government from LSE. And then next one, we have the entire panel. Our moderator, Ray, I'm sure many of you already know him and followed him on LinkedIn. If you haven't, please do so. He is a technology lawyer based in Sydney and the creator of the Global AI Regulation Tracker, which is a platform that tracks AI regulation developments around the world. He is also recognized as a top voice on AI law and regulation on LinkedIn. He offers Control AI Rec newsletter, providing concise analysis on global AI regulation policy and lawsuit updates. And then our speaker, Dr. Jun-E, she is a senior research associate at the Khazanah Research Institute. Her current research interests include digital rights and AI governance in the context of Southeast Asia and Malaysia. She also worked on the area of environmental and climate policy, social and solidarity economy, as well as sustainable development in general. She has a PhD in communication from NTU, a master in public policy as well. And then the next speaker, Abi, he is a first-generation lawyer, independent practitioner, accomplished researcher with expertise in IP rights and also corporate law. He currently practices independently, representing clients before various forums and courts across India. In addition, he's pursuing his master's degree in IP rights to further deepen his knowledge in the field. He has authored impactful publications on topics such as AI in online dispute resolution, state-sponsored surveillance, e-waste management in ASEAN, gender rights through judicial activism. Since 2020, Abi has been actively involved with the ASEAN Youth Organization, our co-host, where he has contributed across various departments. Currently, he's serving as the Sustainability Director, which he oversees grant management, stakeholders partnership, leadership of initiatives such as the AYO Academy, and also the Research Center, and the AYO Avion, which focuses on the environmental activism. And then we have Alex from the European AI Office in the European Commission. So he is a policy advisor seconded national expert sent from the Norwegian Ministry of Digitalization and Governance. He leads work on AI governance and sandbox and work directly to coordinate the subgroup within the confine of the AI board. Furthermore, he recently undertook to work in the AI Pact, including gathering of the signatories of the commitments for proactive implementation of the AI Act. He previously worked full-time on AI policy, ethics, and international partnership with the Norwegian AI Research Consortium. His academic background is within social data science and AI for public service. And during that time, he was also part of the Bringing to Life for some of the most comprehensive science policy changes in the field of AI Norway has ever implemented, including a large increased investment in research and education, as well as increased national planning for AI in health. One recent publication relates to the importance of working with academics within AI regulation sandbox, published in the Harvard Data Science Review. He has been a member of the working committee of the bilateral AI agreement with the US Department of Energy. He was also a member of the Nordic Ethics AI Expert Group within the Nordic Innovation under the Nordic Council of Ministers, with a policy paper informing the Prime Minister of the Nordic countries. All right, I will stop my very long and informative introduction of the panel, and then I will pass it to Ray right now.
Thank you, Edward, and appreciate the very comprehensive introductions, and nice to meet everyone here. So I have thought a lot about how shall I, direct the flow of this conversation, given that AI is such a broad topic, and even if you limit it to just AI safety and governance, that itself is still a very broad topic and very hard to cover in 20 to 30 minutes. So I guess really the two key words I really want everyone to share and learn from this discussion is local nuance. Southeast Asia, as it goes without saying, is a very critical frontier for AI right now. Actually, not just AI, but just from economic perspective, geopolitics perspective, it's a very crucial frontier. And many of you may have already seen news reports. For example, the World Economic Forum, they've pointed out some key factors behind Southeast Asia. For example, its growing young population, very tech savvy, large population, rapid industrialization, rapid digitalization, and incredible cultural diversity within the region, which makes it in a really strong position to be like a global hub for AI in the future. But often when I read about Southeast Asia region, a lot of reports and articles often tend to talk about this region as just one block. Like all the 10 Southeast Asian economies tends to be treated as just one country, which I find it often overlooks many nuances. And I attended the previous roundtable based in Jakarta, where the Indonesian former trade minister Gita, he made a really interesting comment, which says that a lot of the AI safety governance coming out of Southeast Asia is really Singapore dominated. Singapore tends to control the narrative from that, and we don't really hear a lot from the other Southeast Asian countries. So I'm really happy to have this panelist composition right here, where we have representatives from various nations, as well as Alex from the EU perspective, which provide a very nice contrast between the EU and Southeast Asia. So that's the main thing I want to get at, I'll ask questions to really dig into local nuance behind the markets that each of you represent. But before we go into that, I might just quickly set the tone here and just ask each one of you, what is your one big prediction for this year, 2025, in terms of whether it be AI tech, AI governance, or AI law? Maybe I'll start with Abhishek, if you want to share your one prediction, and I'll just go in each of you in turn.
All right. Thank you so much, Ray. I just want to make sure I'm audible and visible to everyone. Perfect. So since I'm a lawyer, my prediction is that in 2025, through judgments, we will be able to clarify who owns the copyright and the intellectual property when it comes to AI-generated materials. I think that is very, very relevant to protect our creativity and also our rights. Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you. That's very concise and very, very poignant as well, especially in the US and UK. We've seen a lot of copyright lawsuits being thrown around, so it's definitely going to be a very big area. Moving on to Jun, maybe if you want to share your prediction.
If I understand correctly, policy-related predictions are also okay. So because I'm looking at Malaysia, and as Jam had mentioned just now, we have a National AI Office, and very recently established in December last year. So there will probably be a flurry of activity on AI and AI governance within the year. So they've outlined 7 deliverables, and that includes action plans, regulatory frameworks, impact studies, and all that. So I hope that the consultations will come around on what they intend to build, and we'll be able to provide our input. And then within the year, the outputs will also hopefully come. And since Malaysia will chair ASEAN this year, and we're championing the ASEAN AI Safety Network, so we'll probably see some action at the regional level as well at closer range. Yeah, so that's my input.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, very keen to further explore the Malaysian perspective from your end. Moving on to Jam, thanks for your brilliant presentation on summarizing Thailand and Malaysia's landscape. Do you have any further predictions to sort of add on top of your presentation?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ray. I think my main prediction is that I think the conversation around AI safety, which I would say currently is largely about AI safety, is like basically checking the safety of products that are made by private firms. I think that will shift, at least with regards to kind of the frontier systems, to be about how these technologies might kind of fundamentally change the global security landscape. So I think you've already seen some writing on this by a lot of kind of US policy think tanks or kind of senior US policymakers around this. I would couple that prediction with a kind of hope that I hope that ASEAN countries will start to take AI safety more seriously overall, but also specifically with regards to frontier systems. So I think some of you might have recently seen the kind of updated ASEAN Ethics and Governance Guide, which now includes a small section on frontier risks. But I really do believe that ASEAN countries have an opportunity to add value here in a way that also serves their national interests. So, for example, if countries can sort of work together to contribute to the global dialogue on safety by advocating against kind of a dangerous arms race around AI between kind of bigger nations, or for pushing for sensible benefits sharing so that countries don't get left behind. So prediction and a hope for the future.
I like that. Thanks for saying that tone. And Alex, any predictions, especially given your European perspective?
Yeah, I think this was outlined, but first I'm not speaking on behalf of the European Commission, nor am I representing the views of the European Commission during this panel discussion. I truly believe that 2025 will be, a really landmark year for AI governance. I think that is really, really clear. And in many ways, it's the case, at least in Europe, that, governance bodies, our national competent authorities have to be designated by, August this year. So that is quite a big shift. And personally, having worked in AI policy and governance for 5-6 years now, it has been the maybe lack of coordination at times, and I think, this will change drastically over this year. And I think similar trends will be seen as well across. But also, as was maybe outlined, the AI safety discussion moving towards AI safety and security discussions. I think it's really crucial with international collaboration in this context, and also international perspectives. I think I always believe that we are so much richer if we can learn from each other, because without that learning, we're really overall much worse off. So that's why I also want to participate in this discussion today.
Thanks, Alex. And I really like your point around participation. A lot of the AI safety discourse I'm seeing these days is really also including the language of inclusive AI, making sure that AI covers as many different demographics as possible. Just to wrap up sort of my own prediction, this might resonate with any of the lawyers here, but I feel there's going to be a lot of legal conceptual shifts in AI. I can think of several examples. One, AI agents or agentic AI are really going to challenge how do we define an AI system for the purpose of regulation. Over the past 2 years, we've been trying to adapt the definitions to accommodate both traditional algorithms, but also generative AI. But now agents are not so much a single app, but they can be part of the entire process. So what's the parameters around that? Another big one is personality rights. Should we start creating rights to your face and voice data? The concept of consent will also be challenged. Right now, consent is based on opt-in or opt-out, which can be, can be subject to violation very easily, especially in the digital world. And also just the concept of copyright and IP, as Abhishek already mentioned, a lot of conflict between the reality and also the traditional legal framework. So that's one big one of the year. I think a lot of these conceptual shifts will start in the UK and the US courts, given the common law foundations over there, and it will seep into the civil law systems quite soon. But yeah, so thanks for everyone for sharing your predictions. Now I want to really get into the meat of the conversation, and I'm going to ask each of you to really just talk about what you see as one big advantage and one sort of big disadvantage or challenge of your local market when it comes to whether it be AI regulation or AI safety. Let's just keep it limited to that front. So what do I mean by that? Some examples could be, the legal system. How does the legal system operate over there? The politics over there, the government system. It could be the language, the demographics of your market. Anything that is quite unique to your market that might not necessarily be highlighted in mainstream news. That's something I really want to get at. So I'll start with you, Alex, since I'm going to go in reverse order. What's one strength and one challenge of? I know you can't speak on behalf of the EA office, but just from your personal perspective, just the broader European landscape, what do you think is one strength and one challenge?
Yeah, I think that's quite clear, I think, to many people that for Europe, it is really crucial to protect the rights of citizens while, trying to move towards an increased capacity for AI innovation, And I mean, I have a background from Norway, as was mentioned. I'm seconded from Norway. I've been in the AI office since it went live half a year ago. And that was really a wonderful thing to see. Norway is a social democracy. So when we talk about innovation, I don't think it necessarily has to be so binary, because a lot of the time we talk about innovation versus regulation. What characteristics of innovation do we want? What kind of characteristics of regulation kind of do we foresee? And, those are quite complex questions as well, and there are societal questions, there are social technical questions. So it's kind of like how we want to treat each other and like what are the rules of the road, if we if we are driving in a car, with our families, we expect a certain amount of road safety. I think it's always the case of society is changing, new technological changes are happening, but we want to make sure that we do it in a responsible way, So those are at least some tangents from my side. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Alex. And now that we sort of mentioned about Europe, I want to move to Abhishek from the broader ASEAN perspective. So often when I read the news, a lot of commentators tend to compare ASEAN as like sort of the new European Union, even though technically there are a lot of key fundamental differences. The European Union is actually a united legal political body where they have, you can have European Union level legislation, whereas in ASEAN, there's no such, I guess, formality as that at this point now. So I just want to, so I know maybe Abhishek, I'm happy for you to speak from a broader regional perspective, or you can pick a particular market within that region. But what's one strength and one challenge from your view?
Thanks, Ray. So I think first I'd like to highlight the disadvantage, and then I'd like to maybe highlight the opportunities that exist within that. So when we are talking about the disadvantages, I think within the ASEAN, we are so diverse, and there is a difference in the digital maturity of each country. For example, Singapore is at global position number 2 when it comes to AI readiness and digital preparedness, whereas the next country to be included is Malaysia, who is at 29, and Cambodia is at 132. So there is a huge disparity within the ASEAN region. The second thing is that the huge population that the ASEAN region is hosting right now. So with regards to how we can harness this challenge would be very tricky for ASEAN, but it also on the flip side offers a good opportunity for us. We are very diverse. We have a lot of different groups of people. We have a huge population of youth. So if we, I would say, funnel and channel some creative policies in a way which are sensitive to our culture and our diversity, and also, put youth at the forefront, we would actually be able to create an ASEAN where a lot of innovation and best practices are coming from the ASEAN region. So I think that's how I would like to sum up the disadvantages and advantages from my side. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I might just want to do a mini follow-up on this question. So when we talk about diversity, what aspect of diversity are we talking about? Are we talking about cultural diversity, or is it political diversity, or is it diversity of like thought, or is it like maybe in case anyone in the audience wants to really dig into that, what do we mean by diversity? Maybe Abhishek, if you want to provide more background to that.
Okay, so I think at every level, we find a lot of intersections exist. And we are very diversified in the point of how we are connected. For example, there are so many remote islands in Philippines where I'm sure people are not even well connected to the entire concept of AI. But in the metropolitans, we clearly see all of us using AI as a luxury, and we are very privileged, right, with regards to that. So I think a very good thing for us to maybe consider is not only to focus on harnessing the current challenges while forgetting about the older ones. Right. Digital connectivity in itself at this stage is a big issue which ASEAN is trying to tackle. Now, on top of that, we're also dealing with AI preparedness. But are we really, how do I say, able to bridge the gap between the diversity which exists with regards to economies, social, and as well as, diversity when it comes to the data set and representation? So that's how I would like to maybe sum up and, put my point forward.
Thanks for clarifying. We now can move on to some of the more specific markets. I'll start with Jun. So from the Malaysian lens. So again, just based on reading the news, I know there's a strong push by the Malaysian government to really make Malaysia into an AI hub, particularly from a data center perspective. You have a lot of untapped land, and you're just trying to make as much of that land as possible for data centers. A lot of the private big tech companies from the West are also trying to invest in Malaysia to build these data centers. So happy for you to talk to the data center aspect, or if you have something else prepared, happy for you to talk to another aspect. But what's one strength and challenge in Malaysia?
Well, I prepared a non-data center answer, so I'll go through that one. On data centers, I think I haven't done in-depth research on it. I just think that we need to consider, the pros and cons of it, right? Given the environmental impacts. So one advantage I think Malaysia has is in the AI governance aspect is that it has a pretty vibrant existing ecosystem with many members are already working under various capacities and on various sectors, like for instance, there's a lot of pushing of the private sector ecosystem, capacity building, there's cybersecurity stuff going on, data governance is also coming together, and there are also people working on AI standards, and sectorally, for instance, an example, the Ministry of Human Resources is recently released a report on an impact study of AI, but also it's not only AI, but also digital economy and green economy, right? So in any case, my point is that there's a lot of things happening, remarkable number of things happening, given that we're such a small developing country. So if we're able to coordinate them well, we can accomplish many things. So of course, the advantage could also very well be a disadvantage, since it increases the amount of politics and personalities at work. And of course, a lot of working in silos. This is something that everyone talks about when you talk to the stakeholders within the AI policy landscape in Malaysia. But I think that everyone in general wants similar things. So it's just a matter of coordinating towards the way forward. And I guess other challenges, just a quick one, is like capacity for AI governance is definitely a problem. State capacity, as well as some other issues that are outside of our control. For instance, how AI technologies usually come from outside our borders. And it's going to be difficult to come to a consensus on how much to regulate, how to regulate. And that's something that I think that we'll have to look at quite soon.
Yeah, very interesting. Also note recently in the news that Singapore, Malaysia are trying to create a special economic zone in the Johor region. So I guess that's an example of a sort of a bilateral interaction between two Southeast Asian nations. I might just open this to the broader group, but is it the case that within the Southeast Asian region, are these sort of AI governance initiatives, are they mostly bilateral or are they more multilateral? So are we talking about one-to-one, or are we talking about there's actually a lot of unity and coordination among all the 10 states, or is it really just individual ad hoc pairings and we just have to wait for them to sort of unite at a certain point? What's the landscape like? Jam, yeah.
Yeah, my guess is that the kind of natural or organic way that it will arise is through kind of bilateral or ad hoc arrangements. This is just because, kind of reflecting what Abhishek was talking about, there is like a tremendous amount of diversity in terms of like quote unquote like AI readiness or just kind of the economic development and political situation of these various countries. So I don't think a kind of EU approach, even a very flexible EU style approach, would make sense. I think countries should probably unite on kind of issues of common interest, whether they're safety related issues like cybercrime or scamming, or kind of sort of AI progress related issues like improving kind of data center construction or AI talent or something. I think kind of like loose sort of working groups probably makes more sense as a way forward than kind of trying to get everyone to agree on something.
Thanks. I like how you mentioned the organic approach. And Abhishek, want to add to that?
Yeah, I kind of want to build on what Jam has mentioned, but I would like to tweak it in a way where I convey what my expectation of how I want it to turn out is. So like, for example, we are aware that TRIPS agreement was a huge development for us in 1994, wherein what TRIPS did was it set uniform standards or minimum standards for everyone when it came to intellectual property rights protection. I think within ASEAN, the first step would be to at least agree upon some minimum uniform standards. And then building on that, they can tweak and change that as per their regional requirements to accommodate their diversity, their economics, as well as the social and cultural structure. But I really think that maybe something like TRIPS would be like a good thing to replicate. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alex?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of commend this initiative in itself, and also like having in consideration that the ASEAN Youth Organization is kind of co-organizing this. I do really strongly believe in this. Perhaps we can call it the new generation of thinkers within sort of like AI governance and AI safety, and in many ways, on a governance level and like on a really human level, it's really possible to meet and to discuss, and sometimes a lot of things happen on that level. So I think the importance of the work that is kind of being done here, is really kind of crucial. If we are thinking about how do we benefit people, how do we benefit the population in these countries. I live in a very small country. Norway is 5 million people. I mean, the European Union is 450 million people, and like the ASEAN region is a significant, player. And if we can contextualize, what is important to all these different people across the region and find common points, that's I think really how we move forward. And so in that sense, just wanted to compliment this as an initiative as well.
Thanks, Alex. I might take this time if there are any audience questions that Anna Lian, if they're sort of suitable for discussion this time. If not, I can move on. I might want to have an audience question in there. Am I able to see the? No, okay. I guess we'll sort of move on to the next question, which is. So I might start with Jam, since this question's about, like, I'm gonna ask each of you to share, one policy initiative, or one piece of regulation, or one project that you're particularly proud or you find most interesting within your market that not many other people might know about. I know Jam already did a presentation on Malaysia and Thailand, but if there's any more specific project or event, or if you want to add further detail to one of the initiatives that I just mentioned, happy for you to do so. What I found particularly interesting about Thailand, which I haven't seen in many other countries, is the focus on AI through the angle of electronic transactions. I found that very interesting. A lot of countries tend to just tackle AI as a direct topic itself, but to see Thailand approach it from an electronic transactions perspective really shows how it tends to see the broader picture of it from like a transaction sort of context. So anything like that, Jam, if you want to add to that, or otherwise, I'm happy to also ask others to provide their insight.
Sure, yeah, I have something to talk about, but can respond to your electronic transactions point. I don't know if it reflects necessarily a kind of a principled position on how to categorize AI, rather that a lot of the previous and fairly successful digitalization efforts in the country have been through like creating sort of wide online payment processing schemes and working with kind of banks, which are often the most tech savvy, like organizations in Thailand, oftentimes like considerably more tech savvy than government agencies in Thailand. I think that kind of electronic transaction angle reflects kind of like a historical process rather than necessarily a principled process. In terms of policy and strategy that might be worth kind of highlighting, people may not know this, but Bangkok is hosting the 3rd UNESCO Global Forum on the Ethics of AI, and also has been working with UNESCO on the AI Readiness Index in the past. The forum is happening, I think, June this year. So I think it's exciting because I'm hoping Thailand can sort of take advantage of its position as a popular travel hub, as also a UN system hub, and be able to host more kind of important events, international fora around AI safety and security. I think there are rooms for events both smaller and larger. I don't know if Thailand's necessarily ready to host, let's say, like the next AI summit, but maybe a regional summit. Definitely room for like mini-lateral meetings between digital ministers or track 2 dialogues that bring in kind of academics and researchers. I'd be excited to see all of that happening in Thailand, and I think Thailand would be well positioned to do it.
Thanks, Jam. I might move to Jun from anything, any particular initiative or project you want to highlight from Malaysia.
So I gave this a thought, and this is a pretty difficult question to answer, I think, because my expectations are high and I haven't really seen anything that I would like to highlight. I mean, it's such a nascent area and we've just begun various initiatives, so they still have to stand the test of time. So I say, I say, ask me in a couple of years, or even by the end of the year, and then maybe I'll be able to answer this a little bit better. I did want to respond to your earlier thing on like bilateral or multilateral initiatives. I think because we are currently the chairman, ASEAN and all that, that has kind of spurred politicians to be quite gung-ho about pushing things at the ASEAN level, which I think is quite promising, because we do really need to capitalize on the huge market the ASEAN is, and to form like a bloc so that we can negotiate and can kind of demand for certain accountability that we would like to see from big tech platforms. And I think also looking at one area that we have seen a flurry of legislations come out, that would be on the online safety area, because it looks at also a lot of cross-border issues. And there as well, we've seen the communication minister and the ministry basically talk about the importance of kind of trying to raise the floor. Is that how you would say it? Yeah, of our regulations by adopting like something that is reasonable that other countries are also adopting, and work towards bit of a harmonized situation on protecting people's safety online. And I think that would also have some effect on AI and AI safety, because there's an overlap there on online safety. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Abhishek, so yeah, happy for you to talk to broader ASEAN or maybe a particular market in that. Maybe there's a question in the chat around there's a question part B which says, in creating a regional AI safety policy within Southeast Asia, wouldn't it be hindered by ASEAN's way of consultation and consensus? I'm not too familiar with the context behind that, but is there a particular way that the ASEAN states consult and reach consensus that might raise interesting discussion here?
All right, so please allow me to elaborate. So it's like a very general principle when it comes to international law, that sovereignty is, like supersedes everything, because international law, treaties, etc., everything that we create in the international domain, also the conventions, are based on consent. You cannot force one country to accept or apply the international law or standards which exist until unless they have ratified it. Or within the ASEAN context also, we see that they have arranged themselves in a way where they want to I would say interact with each other on limited priorities when it comes to culture. Economics is the biggest thing, and then of course political security to preserve the economic gains that they are making, right? So in that part, the idea of having a consensus becomes very, very important. Because they are so different, like look at what Myanmar is going through in terms of their priorities are different right now. So coming to a global consensus is definitely going to be hard. However, when one talks about minimum standard, I think we have to do like a top down and bottoms up approach to understand where everybody is at least willing to align and where to meet. And I think that is where maybe there is room for consensus. Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you. I really like that nuanced explanation. And Alex, anything you want to highlight from Europe? I know everyone's these days talking about the EU AI Act. I'm not sure if you want to make a comment on that, but anything interesting that for us audience to learn about the EU?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I think as you said, the EU AI Act is quite a fascinating piece of legislation. And I would encourage people to read it as well, and just consider the different governance discussions that are being had, because there will be a lot in this year. 2025 is really a significant year for the AI Act. But on a more sort of like localized level, I think it's really fascinating to think about AI policy and AI safety and overlaps with health policy. I think that's a really fascinating space, and a really fascinating space for consensus and collaboration, and also for like global inclusion, or like global majority discussions as well, because I think we had this large experience just recently with the pandemic, and the need to really kind of come together across the entire planet to consider the consequences, of not being prepared. And that is really a significant lesson that we should continue to remember. But on a really localized level, I just also think that AI and like narrow machine learning and like the progress in AI in the last few decades really kind of lends itself to significant developments in health and also in drug development and like in a range of these areas. This is a really, I think, fascinating space for collaboration and discussion in the years to come.
Thank you. So we've got a lot of audience questions come through. So I'm going to try to group them up into thematic points. I think I'll just group this into two main points. One, which is around the broader geopolitics of things, and two, really around capacity building and talent. So I might start with the geopolitics side, which really relates to batch 2 questions. As we know, US and China are really leading the whole AI development side, and the EU is really leading the regulatory side, and also South Korea has also recently launched the AI Basic Act. So we've got a lot of different nations, not necessarily from Southeast Asia, but outside, which are leading the way in AI, and all taking very different approaches, which is very interesting because throughout history, when it comes to tech policy, often we tend to see consensus quite early on. Like privacy, like the dominant model was just consent, just make consent the king, make data security the king, and every country kind of adapted their own way of that. But so AI is a bit different from data privacy. Here we have so many different approaches. So, and also there's the whole trend of AI sovereignty. Abhishek mentioned sovereignty. There's also AI sovereignty where nations are really trying to build their own local industry. And also, this has really become quite aggressive over the past few months. It has sort of evolved to AI nationalism, where we're seeing trade barriers, protection barriers being erected. So, from that context, this is a question to everyone here. What should ASEAN learn from other countries, and how should we navigate through these very complex geopolitical challenges? Yeah, Jam?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. I'll try to tackle little bits of it. I think, firstly, it's going to be very country specific. Obviously, what's kind of unique about a lot of the ASEAN countries is they're sort of, I think the status quo strategy is to hedge between the US and China. And that has like benefits and also has drawbacks. Obviously, one benefit is that you can sort of kind of balance in between and mediate occasionally, and also kind of try to extract concessions or benefits from both sides where possible, although even if you're a smaller player. I kind of expect that to be some ad hoc version of that to be the status quo. I think maybe there's a larger opportunity here in terms of kind of interfacing with this sort of difficult geopolitical conversation. And that's something that's sort of more like advocating for global stability, peace, which is, happens to also be better for business, and not letting this sort of international security dimension of it overwhelm everything else, including delivering AI benefits around the world. I think in terms of the theme of sovereign AI, that's something that I've been sort of trying to wrap my head around as well. There have been a lot of tours by kind of tech company leaders to a bunch of countries in ASEAN talking about how important it is to be sovereign AI. And it's sort of like the person who's selling you the product is pushing for this. And I don't know if countries should necessarily like eat this, and kind of adopt it as the natural thing to do. I think there's maybe room for skepticism and maybe also room for, I don't know, thinking really like how realistic is it for some of these countries to build really advanced data infrastructure? Like maybe there needs to be deals, maybe secured kind of internationally between governments about kind of getting access to like low cost models, distilled models, things around that nature, rather than everyone trying to build their own like data centers. But still trying to figure that out myself.
Thanks, Jam. Yeah, a lot of big questions to wrap around. Anyone else want to add to that? Yep, Jun?
So I think that different how do you say, because the government is not one government, right? So you have many ministries, you have many components of the government, each have their own mandates and their own interests. So I think that I can briefly talk about different angles. I think those who are interested in the industrial policy are definitely looking at chips, semiconductor chips, side because of the chips arms race. So that would be more of like how do we capitalize on this situation between the US and China, and are we able to, without capsizing. And then there's, of course, also the ones who are pushing for the ecosystem of the private sector for ease of doing business. Those are very, very concerned about bifurcation of standards. So that would be, harmonization would be the best, because it would lower compliance costs for everybody, it would be easier, basically. And also we have to be careful to not align ourselves here or there, right? Just have to be careful about the geopolitical side of things. And lastly, I wanted to also touch on the aspect of digital transformation of the public sector, which is something that the Malaysian government is quite interested about and have been looking at it for quite some time now in various blueprints. For that, for instance, that would be looking towards India, for instance, on the digital public infrastructure, and how do we kind of put in different components that are interoperable, and how do we make sure that people have access to digital ID, digital payments, and things like that. So I would say it's not like one angle; it's multiple angles, and yeah, it's kind of a mess to get to kind of wrap our head around.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. I might just ask the last question to Alex and Abhishek. I'm talking about talent and youth. So the questions that we got from audiences, how do we ensure young people voices are being heard, and what are some strategies to develop talent pipelines? So to ask a more specific question, what's the trend that you're seeing among the young AI talent within both Europe and Southeast Asia? Is it the case that is talent migrating out of your region, or is it coming into your region? And also, are certain countries within your region attracting more talent than others? And also within the country, is it particular cities or particular hubs that are attracting that talent? And if there's any unique or interesting factors to think about, I know particularly migration policy is a pretty big factor when it comes to talent. China and US have done a lot in their immigration policies to really attract that talent. The US AI industry is really built a lot upon migrant workers, skilled migrant workers. So it's a huge factor of talent. So maybe I'll start with Abhishek, especially since you're ASEAN Youth Organization. What's the landscape like?
All right. Thank you, Jay. So with regards to migration, I think in itself is made up of so many components. There are so many considerations for one to move. So I'm not going to essentially, bifurcate that. But with regards to talent and opportunity, if there is something that I would like to convey to the youth here is that, if all of us leave our countries right now, like the best minds, the best talents, if we decide to migrate elsewhere, we are going to be leaving our country in a place where, the development may become stagnant or the innovation may be hindered. It is a reality that when it comes to ASEAN and Asian countries, the investment when it comes to NGOs, NPOs who are trying to, how do I say, regulate or voice certain concerns, the funding is not as much as it is in the like the global north counterparts. And I think, but when it comes to creating opportunities in foundations, I would like everybody here to sort of go and support out their local initiatives, organizations, have a dialogue amongst yourself. Because of the pandemic, we have opportunities like these to meet. And one thing to really focus on is that everybody talks about ethical AI, responsible AI, governance. Find out what these things mean for you, for your countries. This is where the important dialogue has to happen, because the concept of responsible ethical governance of AI, all of these are coming in from the West, and their microscope may not squarely apply to our countries. So we really need to get into realizing what is ethical for us, what is responsible for us, and not be dictated directly or try to just save cost when it comes to policy and compliance. I think once we are able to do this, we would be in a position to have innovation, have growth and have opportunities. Also, it's like a reality that when it comes to seeking investment, I know Google, Microsoft, Nvidia, all of them are doing a lot of work signing bilateral treaties within, like ASEAN countries also, and also with organizations like ASEAN Foundation to prepare the youth. Of course, that supply chain of talent is also very, very beneficial. Learn whatever you can from wherever, but at the same time, you must figure out what works for you and stick to your guns. That's what I would like to say. Thanks, Ray.
Love it. I really like that wrap. Yeah, not just read stuff from face value, but really absorb it and think about how does it apply to your local context. Brilliant. And Alex, anything to add around the talent landscape in Europe?
Yeah, no, I think it's. I mean, I made a short comment as well in the chat, but the scientific foundations, and the whole like R&D side of the overall field of artificial intelligence. I think for evidence-based policy making, I mean, and quality, purchasing, delivery, talent is a difficult question. But you could see also from the foundations of some of the largest companies in the field of AI and the most rapidly growing, at least in some regards, with OpenAI, was initially, kind of like more of a research foundation, right? Anthropic and like a lot of these different players, Google DeepMind, their research focus, their connections to kind of like university and education environments have been fairly strong, and I think so. If we are thinking about talent and AI development, we have to invest in research and education, and I think like that's a core component of good AI policy and governance, in my opinion, as well, and connecting kind of research and science also to policy making. I think this is for me kind of like a really core concern in AI policy, because there is not always the case that politics and governance are connected, and moving across those spheres, sometimes you get quite surprised actually by the way decisions are informed and made. I mean, one should not maybe be so surprised, but I think there is a really room there, and youth plays a significant role in that, because coming in with new perspectives and asking questions, being curious, I think that requires also leadership from other generations, because we have to let like new voices be heard, and I think this is really a crucial part of society. With that, I will round off.
Thanks, Alex, and I appreciate you covering also the other aspects of the audience questions. So I'm sure the audience will really appreciate your all-rounded answer. I'm not sure, honestly, I think we're over time. I kind of lost track of time, but I think maybe that's probably the end of the discussion. What I really took away from here is that AI questions can get really big, and I love how depending on which market based, you can have very different interpretation to what that is. The way certain issues might be an issue in one market, but less so of an issue in another, and also different approaches. Diversity is also a thing that, it's a term that often gets thrown around in papers, but now we're really seeing the real practical implication of diversity and what it means to collective wisdom and apply different learnings and perspectives to the field of AI safety. One thing that I really sort of also took away was just, wish I had got to explore further, had more time, was really examine the fundamental legal system differences between each Southeast Asian nation, and how that applies to someone like me from Australia, where our government's also trying to learn from everyone. Like for Australia, we tend to learn a lot from Singapore and Malaysia, given the British common law system tradition. I know Indonesia has sort of a Dutch civil law system. Vietnam thinks a French civil law system. So like each Southeast Asian nation has its own particularly unique legal system, and how that influences the way you approach and research topics of AI governance. That's something that I personally want to examine more, study myself. But With that, yeah, maybe I'll give any one sentence wrap up from each panelist here, in case you wanna, yeah, just 1 minute conclusion. I'll start with Abhishek. What's your one-liner wrap up?
My one-liner is going to be read the terms and conditions and protect yourself. Thank you so much.
Nice. Alex.
Yeah, I think just continuing this discussion and like for people listening, that all these kind of conversations matter. So kind of keep up the conversation and like keep going on whichever part of the journey you are on, like in the surf landscape. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Jun.
I'd like to use my one-liner to plug this report that we're going to actually publish in about 10 days' time. So it's a report on AI impact and governance published by our team in KRI, talking about AI risks, governance challenges, and ways forward. And it's a result of extensive engagement with the Malaysian AI stakeholders, and it includes an AI risk typology that we have built from the data analysis. So I say it'll be useful for those who are interested to know how a developing country such as Malaysia is considering the topic of AI risk and how to move forward. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's a good teaser. Keen to see that report. And Jam?
Yeah, I'd actually love to plug something as well.
Yeah.
I have an upcoming report on which acts as kind of an intro guide to the field of agent governance. So basically, what are the kind of open questions and kind of proposed frameworks to respond to a world where there are potentially millions or billions of agents kind of operating in the economy and society. A lot of really interesting things I think are included in the report. One kind of maybe more speculative thing is, not just thinking about how agents will operate in business, but, let's say you have like kind of human level agents. How is that going to change what governance looks like? You can use agents for a bunch of things, including things in the public sector. It might open up a lot of interesting possibilities, but also risks. So, yeah.
That's great. I just noted that we still actually got some time. I think 7 minutes left. I'll just open to the audience. Unless Leanne or Edward want to say something, or if there are new questions have come through. I think that's really it from my end. From the moderators' questions end. Yeah.
I have one personal question, which is tied to what Jam has shared at the very beginning of the conversation. You mentioned that potentially there might be room for a regional-based safety network infrastructure, right? I also see that there's one question from the audience around catastrophic risk, global catastrophic risk. Do you see ASEAN potentially having a role in supporting the global level catastrophic risk reduction, potentially with the safety network model that you mentioned, or potentially with some other initiative?
Yeah, sure. I think, compared to maybe an actor like the EU or the US or China, the overall like possibility of contributing to the catastrophic risk discussion globally is more limited. But I think there are specific areas. So yeah, for instance, if you had some sort of safety network model, or you had kind of AC, AI Safety Institute equivalents in ASEAN, maybe there are specific areas where you could kind of push for interesting safety work. So for instance, let's say in Thailand, there's a lot of kind of interest in medical AI, which is kind of a rich practical area for alignment research to be working, because in healthcare you're often dealing with like patients, things around consent, kind of complicated ethical questions there. So maybe specific answers around that. Certain countries like Malaysia or Singapore might be able to leverage their position in the AI supply chain to kind of get useful safety things to happen. And yeah, kind of the points I made earlier about having more of a voice and being a little bit more united on certain issues, like contesting like the securitization of AI and not allowing that to kind of overwhelm. Maybe more like benefit sharing or progress related discussions and trying to push for kind of risk reduction in a smart way.
I think that this is where partnerships and networks will come in very, very useful. As individual countries or even as ASEAN, it would be difficult, especially because of the lack of capacity, right? But I think that it is within our capacity to reach out to stakeholders in the global north and try to build that capacity very quickly. What does it mean for us, for instance, right? We can ask questions, right, to understand what are the implications of frontier technologies and AI safety are within our region, and also put forth the point. There's also a lot of existing harms that you guys should, have some priority over as well. So I'd say that conversations bridging different stakeholders, like whether it be technologists across to people within society, engineers across CSOs, for instance, or smaller countries upwards to the international level, connecting to the North countries. So there's just a lot of non-technical ways we will be able to build bridges towards, I feel. So it's a matter of doing these connecting. Yeah.
Thanks. There's also a new question coming in from the audience. So we have touched on the catastrophic end of the spectrum of risk. There's also another questions about the near term, happening right now on the bias and discrimination. So there's quite a lot of literature research that are coming from the US and Europe about those kind of bias and discrimination risk caused by or potentially harmed with the addition of AI. Are any of you aware of any potential research or literature that are done in the ASEAN context regarding bias and discrimination? Yeah, Abby.
Yes, so I think I would be able to add some insight into this, because this is an area that I'm really interested in, the usage of surveillance tool and misinformation and how that is affecting the political security within Asia. So I think everyone is aware that last year, I think more than 50 countries had their elections, right? And for the general elections, to, I would say, peddle propaganda and misinformation was a very, very big consideration that everybody was dealing with, right? We've seen this in the current rift between India and Canada. The Canadian president is also talking, Prime Minister, sorry, is also talking about misinformation. Similarly, India ranks first when it comes to the risk of disinformation as misinformation also. Now, there are two sides to this coin. One is, what is misinformation? That is very subjective. What is misinformation for Ray may not be misinformation for me. We come from two very different societies. The second thing is that a lot of these, I would say, indices when it comes to publishing, okay, which countries at what risk of misinformation, disinformation, media freedom, etc., are based on second-hand research. Or even if they do their own research, it is based on how they perceive the country. It may not be, it's based on their standards, it's based on their objective, I would say. I'm forgetting the term, but basically they have some standards in mind, right? So they may not squarely apply to the country. So I would urge you to maybe look into, if you want to dive into this, start from the NSA leak. See how the NSA leak shaped the global discourse around data protection, because that was led by the Five Eye Alliance. Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US, and the UK were spying on a lot of developing countries, including their allies in Germany. Then came the GDPR, also the Cambridge Analytica thing that happened in 2016. Read about that. See how social media platforms are used to peddle information and disinformation. This is a very, very interesting discussion to dive into. And also, always diversify your sources. Do not be in an echo chamber where you're only trying to read similar type of material, because algorithms are designed in a way, if you consume a certain type of information, they will keep showing you the same information again and again. So you will be in an echo chamber. That's it for me.
All right, Ray, we are at time. Do you want to close us out and share your final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess my final thoughts is to build upon Abhishek's comment about misinformation. Just one thing I like to recall from on first day in law school, which is the difference between truth, fact, and evidence. apart from like the laws of physics, there's actually no such thing as objective truth. Everyone's truth is subjective. What we're really talking about is fact and evidence. Evidence builds the fact, and the fact is what builds your own personal truth. In this day and age, like during the social media era, a lot of the misinformation was relating to the fact level. So the facts were being skewed, and we all got our own different perspectives. But right now with deep fakes and generative AI, it's not just the fact that's being threatened, it's the evidence level as well. You can create a fake video, a fake document. It can create so many fake things so easily, which once the evidence layer gets skewed, the fact layer automatically gets skewed, and therefore your own personal truth gets skewed as well. So it's a very interesting society. It's a very interesting era, and it just goes back to my earlier comment on there's got to be some new paradigm shift in the way we perceive legal notions, and also relating back to Alex's sort of written comment on the chat, which is really like, what does it mean by evidence-based policy making when the evidence itself is kind of murky now? So that's sort of my philosophical wrap up after that conversation.
All right, thanks everyone, and thanks all the audience for joining our roundtable. If you want to know more about the future events, follow AI Safety Asia on LinkedIn, and also follow all of our speakers and moderator on their LinkedIn as well. They are all very productive in terms of chunking out research and also insights. So follow them for more research. All right, thanks everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.